I only hope that we never lose sight of one thing, that it was all started by a mouse.
Hello, everyone out there in podcast land. This is the Beyond the Mouse podcast, the podcast for all things Disney for NPR Illinois Community Voices and for the Front Row Network. I am your host, Craig, and I'm joined today by my co-hosts, Mr. Brett Rutherford.
Hello.
And Miss Vanessa Ferguson.
Hello.
We have another great interview coming your way today. I'm so excited that we get the chance to sit down and talk to Academy Award-winning director Brenda Chapman. So excited for this talk. Brett, talk to me all about your excitement.
Oh, well, when I was doing the research, because I knew a little bit, but when I was doing research, I found out so much more, and I was just impressed, so I can't wait to ask her all sorts of questions.
Yeah, yes. Vanessa, your thoughts?
I am so excited about her new movie. We got a chance to watch Come Away, and I can't wait to talk to her about it. Also, this whole interview is like legitimizing my Disney love with my brother and my family. So scoring this interview makes me legit. So excited to talk to her.
I feel like you're going to ask about that later on in the interview.
Oh,
we'll see
where it comes up. I'm going to tell her all about it.
I right at the top, just in case for whatever reason it doesn't come up as much, I need to tell you, Come Away is available video on demand right now. You can watch this film, and it truly is a beautiful retelling, reimagining, a whimsical look at Peter Pan and Alice in Wonderland, and it's just an all-star studied cast. We have some questions about that. We can't wait to talk to her about all of that. I should also mention that I had the chance to interview Brenda Chapman and Kevin Lima back at the Lincoln Film Festival in 2017. It was Brandon Davis and I. We interviewed them. It was so funny, such a funny story. Our mics were not working that day, so I put my iPhone in the middle of a pickle jar bucket, and we gathered around in like folding chairs in the movie theater, and that's how we interviewed. That's how the interview went. It was so much fun. They were so gracious with their time. Brenda and Kevin are just phenomenal people. And so I can't wait for this conversation. So with that, let's go ahead and go right to our interview with Brenda Chapman. And we welcome to Beyond the Mouse and NPR Illinois Community Voices podcast, Brenda Chapman. Hi, Brenda. It's nice to have you.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. So we're so fortunate to get the chance to speak with you. It's actually funny. I was looking, and it was 3 years ago today that I had the ability to interview you at the Lincoln Film Festival. So it's awesome that it worked out that it was today that we were doing this. But I wanted to talk to you about fairy tales, because it seems like fairy tales play such an important part of your career, whether that's with Brave at Pixar or whether that's your new film, Come Away. It does seem like you have such an interesting take on fairy tales. Even 'Twas Entertainment is the name of your company. So what is it about fairy tales in particular that draws you to them?
Well, I grew up on them. So from such a young age, before I could read, one of my older brothers, who's 16 years older than me, used to read Dell comics, and he loved the Westerns and whatever. But when he would go to the grocery store or wherever he got his, he would pick me up the junior classics. And so I could just look at the pictures, and he brought me Beauty and the Beast, Little Mermaid, The Enchanted Fish, just all these things. And then when I got old enough to start reading them, I read those, and then I started reading the books. And I just there's such a fascinating world to me, and I love period pieces, so that fits right into that as well. So.
Yeah, that's a perfect marriage there for sure. Brett, I think you have our next question.
Well, when I was completing research for our interview, I was struck by the diversity of experiences you've had in your career. In between artist for Who Framed Roger Rabbit and director for both animated and live action films, including The Prince of Egypt, Brave, and Now Come Away, and writer for a number of films, including, quote, the first full-length animated film in cinema history to be nominated for a Best Picture Oscar, Beauty and the Beast, end quote. Wow. So very impressive. and a Central Illinois native, so very inspirational to us too. So, well, I happened to be at the Disney Studios in Burbank in January of 1990 on a cast member studio tour around the time The Little Mermaid came out. So I remember, I mean, I was just there for a short time, but I so remember the Oscar buzz going around the studio when we were there. I can hardly imagine what the excitement level was after the actual Best Picture nomination. Would you mind taking us behind the scenes during that time at the studios and then onto Oscar night for Beauty and the Beast? Were you able to attend the Oscars, or did you watch at home with popcorn like I did?
Well, they of course couldn't invite the entire crew to the Oscars, but I mean that day, oh my gosh, it was such a buzz. We at that time animation was in warehouses in Glendale, you know, and so when I think I was working on, was I working on The Lion King yet? I might have been working on The Lion King at that time, and when it sorry, my brain is starting to go on me, but I remember coming in and everyone was just a buzz. No work got done that day. We were all just sort of all around the studio, just so excited about it. And then on Oscar night, what Disney did was they had a big party for us with big screens up everywhere so we could watch it, and they fed us and we just celebrated. And even though we lost, it was still kind of amazing to
oh sure, yeah,
part of it, you know. So
wow.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I had popcorn that night, so, yeah,
You absolutely should have won. And you just mentioned a couple of those Disney Renaissance films that you had a chance to work on, and Vanessa has a question about that.
Well, you worked in Disney animation during the time of the Disney Renaissance, like Craig said, and so we want to ask you, what was that like, and did you know you were in the midst of greatness, or can you tell us about working also with Don Hahn and with the Beauty and the Beast, the Lion King, the Hunchback, and so many of those other amazing films at that time?
Well, it was we kind of knew after Little Mermaid that we were like sort of on a roll and it was exciting, but I don't think we really thought of it as, you know, the Renaissance, you know, or the next. We were all just so happy to be working at our dream job and just keep going. And I mean, Little Mermaid was one of my favorite fairy tales when I was always one of the two, you know, fairy tales that my brother had given me in the comic book form, and Beauty and the Beast. So I was over the moon to work on those, and it was very exciting. And I had such wonderful mentors. So I was just really in a bubble during that time. I think it's my favorite time of my entire career, to be quite honest. It was just so much fun, and the people I worked with were so nice, so talented, and it was all about making these movies. I mean, the politics were usually with the executives and all of that, but amongst the artists, we were just enjoying working together, and at least in the story department, that's my memory of it. So you know, Beauty and the Beast, Mermaid, I was a trainee on that one. And, you know, I got to work with, say, Roger Allers, who eventually directed Lion King. And, you know, he was my main mentor at that point. And then Beauty and the Beast, he was the head of story. So I was kind of like his second in command. I just would help out if he needed extra help as head of story, but we shared an office and just did so much together, and it was so much fun. And then when he got asked to direct Lion King, he then asked me to be head of story, and which is a joke in itself, in that I was trying to avoid that project like the plague because it had been in development hell forever, and it didn't be good. And I was aiming for a version of Swan Lake that Mike Gabriel was trying to get going, but then another studio did Swan Princess, so they shut that down. And I had said, you know, if you want to consider me for a head of story, it was the first time I'd already gone in and asked, to be considered. And then I realized, Roger's going to direct The King of the Jungle, and he's going to ask me to be his head of story. And he did. And I was like, oh, I can't say no because they'll never ask me again. But it turned out to be an amazing project, an amazing, it was just such a great opportunity. And I was just too short-sighted at the time to realize it until I got into it. And then it was amazing.
And this is just a guess, but because of the Twas Entertainment, and it seems like you really enjoy literary works as well. The fact that The Lion King so closely matches with Hamlet, I'm sure that was something that you got to enjoy going back and reading that Shakespeare and reading all of this and getting ready for that. So that's incredible. One thing that we failed to mention at the beginning of the interview, we mentioned you are a Central Illinois native, but just in case people that missed our first interview with you a few years back, which we can also post again, so you could go back and listen to that interview. But you're from Beeson, Illinois, and can you just give a quick version of your story of how you came from Beeson and then moved out to LA?
Yeah, how do you get out of Central Illinois? Some of us would love to know.
Well, when I was little, I just drew all the time. And so I was kind of known as the drawer at school, and, the artistic one. It was me and a couple of other friends, but I just kept going with it. And then when I got into high school, I at Lincoln, we got bused into Lincoln for high school. I just kept going, and I realized I didn't know what I just knew I wanted to draw for a living. And then one day I was watching an animated film and actually accidentally stayed for the credits and realized, oh, people make these things. They don't just exist, It's just that's sort of my naive small town approach to animation. They just happened, And so that's when I started looking into it. And a friend of a friend, sorry, I lost you guys for a minute. Okay. So a friend of a friend of my sister's had a cousin who worked for Disney out in California, and he was live action. And so she got me his phone number, and we talked, and I told him what I really wanted to do. So he got me the name and address of the animation studio, because all of this is pre-internet. Thank you very much. And so I called them and no, I wrote to them and asked them what I needed to do to become an animator, and they wrote me back amazingly and sent me some brochures for CalArts, California Institute of the Arts, which was a school that was started by Disney for animation specifically, but for the arts. It has 5 different arts within it: dance, theater, fine art, music. It's quite a school, but that it was really expensive. So I had to work for a few years. I went to Lincoln College for 2 years, worked for 2 years, and then got rejected the first time I applied to CalArts. And by the time I was 21, I was on my way to California. I got into CalArts, and that's how I got into Disney.
That's wonderful. What a wonderful story. And then Brett has a question about one of your earlier jobs on Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Yeah, well, you worked as an in-betweener.
Uh-huh.
Wow. When we spoke with Floyd Norman, he said that everyone starts as an in-betweener. So I'm like going, you're in very good company, but you know that already. So, but with Who Framed Roger Rabbit, there are so many animated characters from so many films and studios, and all of that was hand-drawn animation.
Yes, it was.
So, yeah. So, so the in-betweens, I'm like going, how long is this film? But anyway, but Who Framed Roger Rabbit is still quite an artistic and technical achievement because it was live action animated hybrid film.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is that I'd started in as a story trainee on Little Mermaid, but after that they said, you know what, your draftsmanship has a lot to be desired, so we're going to put you in cleanup, and see if that'll help. But it's kind of the opposite of what should have happened. They should have just made me take drawing classes because you have to draw so tight. But they gave me the choice between that and there was another film. I think Billy Joel did the music about a dog, and I can't remember.
Oh, Oliver and
Oliver
Company.
and Company.
Oliver and Company.
Yes.
And so I could work. They told me I could choose which one I wanted to work on, and I thought Roger Rabbit is going to make history. I think I want to work on that one.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
that's
Good
the one I had to
choice.
work on. But it was such a challenge because the LA unit did the Weasels and Benny the Cab and that group. And so I just remember in betweening Weasels and trying to get their feet stuck to an oil spot on the road, because Bob Zemeckis, live action director, he doesn't hold off the camera like you do in traditional animation. The camera was always kind of moving, and so
Oh my gosh.
find how to glue those feet down to the film itself. It looked like they're floating. So you were anything you could find that, what was it on the last frame? Okay, so I have to shift it just a little bit to make sure it's still in the same spot.
Wow.
It was a technical craziness, and luckily I had some great supervisors who helped me with that. Renee Holt was one of them. She was amazing. But yeah, it was, and Benny the Cab was fun to draw. He was a little easier than the Weasels.
Oh wow. Well, I'm gonna watch it again and go, oh my gosh, look at that. Where are their feet? Where are their feet? Where are their feet? I'm like going, and I'm sure it'll be gorgeous. I can't wait to see it again. But that is just
Brenda, you should know
film.
that anytime anybody tells us anything, we go tell everyone else. Now, Brenda's sad in this scene, and we're not above that. We're gonna do that. Yeah.
Part of our
friends
folksy
all
charm,
hate us at this point. Our friends all hate us for sure.
Yeah, we have no real friends, but it's fine.
It's just the three of us now. It's kind of sad, but that's all we have. So
jumping ahead a bit in your career, you were given the responsibility of really bringing DreamWorks animation to life, because you were given the directing role of The Prince of Egypt, which was going to be their first animated feature. And so we spoke about this just a little bit in our previous interview, but wonder if you could talk about that experience, in particular, getting that call from Steven Spielberg to talk about, hey, can you come on board on this project, and kind of how all of that worked, and what it was like working on that project.
Well, it was more Jeffrey Katzenberg, when he left Disney, he knew that our contracts were up the same day. So he wanted me to go over. After working with him on The Lion King, he'd gotten to know me and respected my story work. So, but I was really concerned because Jeffrey wouldn't tell me what the project was. And so he wouldn't tell me. And then, so I wasn't just coming over on his say so. So he had Spielberg call me, and I still remember picking up the phone in my little box of an office at Disney, and hi Brenda, it's Steven. And I'm like, Steven? And he goes, Spielberg. And I was like, so I get up, I shut the door, I'm like, oh my God. So he was so nice, and he just, said, we'd really love for you to come over and all of that. And just really nice. And he was taking Jeffrey's word for everything, So after that, Jeffrey called me, and then he told me what the project was. And then I balked even more, because I thought, you realize you're taking God on as a subject matter and how hard that's going to be. But the more I thought about it, and, it was starting, to get weirdly political at Disney and at the time. And so I just thought, you know what, it's time for a change. And I thought I was going over just to be build the story department, that I was going to head up the whole story department and get that going. But discovered that Jeffrey had been asking people to direct and he kept getting turned down. And so finally I got on the list. It was like my senior prom, you know. There was a guy at senior prom who kept showing me letters to all these girls he wanted to go to prom with, and they kept rejecting it. And then finally I got my own letter. But at the same time, you know, I think he had faith that I could do it, and it was exciting, you know, the whole starting up a whole studio and all these people who came on to do something new and exciting. And it was a very different tone of film than what we'd done at Disney and what some of the people had done at Amblimation before that. So I'm very proud of it, and I had a really good time. I worked with, luckily, you know, my co-directors, I got along with them great. We got to know each other, and we were on the same page, and just were able to make a cohesive film.
Yeah, such a wonderful film too. So I encourage anybody that some way you missed The Prince of Egypt to go back and watch that film, because it is just so wonderful. But Brett, you have a question more specific to working with Jeffrey Katzenberg.
Well, yeah, that's a little bit of a spoiler or a hint. Anyway, so you ready? Okay. But through the years, and thanks now to all of the extras on Disney Plus, I've watched the various making ofs. I'm a big making of person, but watching all the making of shorts about Disney films, including the animated films of the Disney Renaissance, like from 1989's Little Mermaid to 1999's Tarzan. Great film, by the way. Great film, and great and kind director, your husband, Kevin Lima.
Yeah, you know, this is when I was looking at Brett's script here for the question, and I have to say, I just wanted to butt in and say this now to you and to Kevin. You were some of the first interviews that I had an opportunity to do, and it really opened the door for possibility for me. And then at the beginning of this whole global thing we got going on, we reached out to Kevin, and he was so gracious with his time. And at that, in really both interviews, he's given some advice, and he said, you just got to go and ask for it. And we've been doing that ever since. And we have had so many phenomenal experiences through basically through your family, and we really give you a lot of credit for that. So I just want to say thank you to the two of you, because just I mean, we've spoken to so many people we would have never felt like we could have asked had we not just got that little push and that little bit of advice. So I wanted to butt into this middle of this question and just say thank you for that.
I will tell him you said that, because that's his mantra.
Yeah.
Also,
absolutely.
Kevin said that he would tell Phil Collins that I said hello, so I hope he did, because I'm a big fan of Phil.
Like, Christmas is just around the corner, so you know, like.
Anyway, back to you, Brett.
Yeah, back to you, Brett, in the middle of a question.
Yes, well, okay. But during that time in the Disney Renaissance, Jeffrey Katzenberg was chairman of Walt Disney Studios. And while watching the behind the scenes, it's clear that he was a driving force behind the success of The Lion King and other films. But you worked with him at Disney and then with The Prince of Egypt. So here's my two-part question. A, what is it like working with Jeffrey Katzenberg? And B, he seems to be a very passionate and intense person. Any lighthearted or funny moments or stories you can share? Did you ever have one of his famous breakfast meetings? And how does he like his eggs? You can answer any of those or one of them or whatever, but yeah. How does he like his eggs? Did you ever have a breakfast meeting? I just think that's just fascinating. So
You know what? I can't remember what he had.
Oh,
I didn't have one.
Jeffrey.
He was a kinder, gentler Jeffrey at DreamWorks on Prince of Egypt. I think he was a very humbled man having left the way he did, and then having two really close friends help him, Steven Spielberg and David Geffen, help him with DreamWorks. And so he was he was a lot of fun to work with. He was a tough nut, and we could butt heads. It's like, that's one thing I really respected about Jeffrey, is that didn't always agree with what he said, or he didn't always agree with what I said, but we could talk about it. And I had to get used to the idea of, just some like, this is how it is, blah, 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 blah. I had to get used to that and not take it in my little Midwestern, heart too hard.
Sure.
And then found out that I could sort of give it back, but probably a little more, what some people would say, Canadian, a little nicer, a Midwestern Canadian thing. But he was, I can't think of any particular, I'm trying to think of a.
Oh, that's okay. It's just good to know that, that you had a good time working with them.
Yeah, I think it was hard at the end when he sold DreamWorks. It did feel a little bit like a betrayal to all the people who had followed him there, and people who had, Kevin had a project there, I had a project there, and then it just all went away. So that was rough, So, it's a love-hate, good,
Take the good with the bad, unfortunately.
He did really push, once he saw what the quality of work we were doing at Disney, he really got behind it, because I think there was a time when, before they showed up, that they were considering shutting down animation completely.
Wow. Wow. Thank you for doing all that hard work. So you and everyone there. So
the other thing I'll say about Jeffrey, though, is that he was very supportive of women in the industry. I mean, I wouldn't have gotten a job at Disney if it hadn't been for him, because I've told this story before, but when I went in, some of the artists, they look at your portfolio when you put it in. I was fresh out of Cal Arts, and they noticed my student film and liked it, so they put my name up as possible new story trainee. And so I went in for my entrance interview, and the guy who was running, I think his name was Ed Hansen at the time, he blatantly told me that the only reason I was in his office and having this interview was because the new guys upstairs were giving them flack about not having women in creative positions. Oh. So, and there were no women in story, so I was the first woman in story in decades. And I put that with Jeffrey mainly, because he, through his entire career in animation, always had women in creative roles and producerial roles, and all of that. So for that, I always give him credit, and I'm very grateful. I wouldn't have the career I had without him.
That is good. Well, now you kind of look at that as, well, how could they not? But at the time, that's just the way it was. Yeah. So thank you all for your progress, and more and more and more. We need everyone to do everything. So
certainly need even more progress today, for sure. Vanessa, you had a question again about Prince of Egypt.
Yes, well, that's a movie that I really remember enjoying as a young person, and the song "When You Believe," I won't sing it right now because there's no way I could do it justice, but I'm pretty sure it was the song that every aspiring theater kid tried to sing. And so can you tell us maybe more about making the movie? And I also just have to ask, do you have any stories about Mariah Carey or Whitney Houston? Because that song is just iconic. And the music video is also iconic.
Oh, it was such a, like I said before, it was such a pleasure to work on. It was exciting. It was groundbreaking for all of us, just being able to deal with subject matters that were a little deeper than things that we've dealt with before. But I unfortunately didn't get to sit in on the recording session, but what I did get, I got to hear the playback and Hans Zimmer trying to put it all together and everything. And the funny thing was, everybody, just as in the voice performances, when you're doing a character, even in songs, you do multiple takes. And it was funny because they were trying to out-riff each other.
Yeah.
Where is the tune? It was just, it was like, all over the place. And it was beautiful, but it was like they lost sometimes the tune of
the melody. Yeah.
melody. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
But so it was really funny. So Hans had to get in there and, find those moments when they did, and even Schwartz was going crazy. And it was kind of funny.
That's so
Oh
great.
wow, that's a great story. Oh my gosh.
I so suspected that. Listen, I'm like, they're riffing. I'm like, and they're so good at it too. Like I said, we can't do justice, but I wondered that.
But they just did it's a beautiful song. They did a beautiful job with it, but it was funny.
I bet. Oh my gosh. Wow. Well, the throwdown, if there's a throwdown, as far as I'm concerned, Whitney won. So
yeah,
that's just my opinion. That's just my opinion.
But I'll move on
Sorry.
to our next question in case Mariah ever comes knocking.
I know, don't hate me.
Brave is a favorite of ours as well, and in fact, when I told my brother I was going to be speaking with you, he then proceeded to quote lines from the film to me. So who'd have thought? But can I just say thank you? I'm sorry, what's that?
How old is your brother?
He is 40. So he's an older guy, and like I told him, like, oh, I do this Disney podcast. He's like, oh, so you talk about Disney movies? I'm like, well, we're actually going to be talking to Brenda from Brave. And he's like, Brave? And then he starts doing the lines for me. So big fans apparently in my family, and why wouldn't we be? It's a great movie. And I want to say thank you too for having curly-haired girls represented in Brave, because Little Mermaid hair is so not attainable. Yeah. But yeah, obviously we wanted to ask you about the movie, and specifically I wanted to ask you about the relationship between Merida and her mother. Is that a relationship that you relate to in any way? Because I know I personally relate to Merida, and I know this is terrible, but I was cheering a little bit when Merida's mom turns into a bear. Don't tell my mom I said that, but I had those feelings. So I just wanted to ask you, what were your feelings?
Well, that's what it's all based on. It was inspired by my relationship with my daughter and I started thinking up these things when she was about 4 years old, because I was I just moved up to Pixar to the Bay Area from LA, and she was preschool age, and I was having to get her up and get ready for school, and she just argued every step of the way, just didn't. And I was thinking, this is supposed to be a teenager, this is what teenagers do. What are you going to be like as a teenager? And every day I drive into work going, thinking about her. And thus Merida was born, that I started thinking about it so much that I thought I have to channel this into something. And so my love of my daughter, my love of fairy tales, and my love of Scotland are the three things that made that film. But yes, she was just a 4-year-old, but she grew up to be a teenager, and oh my gosh, yes, I was spot on. But then, my relationship with my mother, I was very close with my mom, and I was the youngest, and I guess I saw all my siblings drive my mother crazy. So I was like, okay, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. And I'll get much more out of life with my mom if I'm a good girl. So I wasn't quite that teenager to my mom, but I understood the frustration. So yes. And I always said that, if Merida had managed to if Emma had managed to turn me into a bear, she would have been pointing me out to her dad, Like, she's a shooter,
Oh.
As,
I found out.
And she denies it, but I don't know.
as someone that has a 4-year-old now, I can relate to that so much more than the last time we spoke, because it took about 25 minutes for him to put pants on this morning. Come on, child. You got to change every single day. That's just something you do every day. But that's so great. And we really love Brave so much. But we want to also ask you questions about your new film, which at the time of this recording, it's actually coming out tomorrow on video on demand. We will be releasing this interview a bit later, so it's actually widely available right now for anybody to go check out video on demand. It's called Come Away, and it combines Peter Pan and Alice in Wonderland and some of those amazing stories, and again, that fairy tale aspect to these. But what was it about those two stories in particular, Peter Pan and Alice in Wonderland, that made you feel compelled to direct this picture?
Well, I love both of those stories. I grew up with both of those stories, and um, when I read Marissa's script, what I loved was that it was grounded in a real world, albeit a period world, but also that there was a tragic aspect to it, and yes, in Lion King, I dealt with Mufasa's death and Prince of Egypt, all of that, but there was something really appealing to me to be able to explore something a little deeper than what I normally got to explore in animation. But it wasn't something that I was aiming to do, because I love animation and I never intended to direct a live action film. It just wasn't my aspiration, but the script ended in my lap and I thought, well, if I'm going to do one, this is probably it. So did I answer the question?
Yeah, you sure did. And that's it actually leads me to another question, which is the fact that this is a live action piece and your career has been in animation. And I know that Kevin has had a similar experience with having done animation, then also directing Enchanted and 102 Dalmatians. There is a difference, I'm sure, in directing for animation versus live action, but how did you see that difference, and what did you enjoy about the live action experience?
Um, the huge difference was in just how you have to fly by the seat of your pants every day, trying to get enough footage and to make sure you have enough to cut together at the end of the process. Where in animation, I think a lot of people don't know, but a lot of people do now, that you pre-edit your movie, because you're basically making your film via storyboards, and you get to rework and rework and rework the story until you got it just the way you want it, where you're kind of like, okay, here we go, let's pong that out there and see what happens. Each shot you're hoping is going to work in the film. So that uncertainty was a little scary to me, but it was kind of invigorating at the same time. But I think what I really enjoyed was being on the sets and in the locations with the actors and seeing them get into their characters through their costume and being in the place and their makeup and their hair. Because in animation, you really have to try to help the actor get into that through the visuals that what you have that, for animation. You surround them with paintings and photographs and whatever you can of the work that you've done, so they can kind of put their heads in the character, where on live action they kind of embody that as opposed to. So that was fascinating, and working with the kids was a lot of fun. They were everybody said, oh, that's going to be so hard, kids on your first live action movie. It's like, well, I worked with kids before, Jonathan Taylor Thomas was a sweetheart, it was great to work with, but they were so good, and the whole thing was about having them play in the beginning, and those were some of the first scenes we shot, with them playing in the woods and all of that, and playing at the house. And so it was just fun. I just had a good time. They were great kids.
That's
Where did
wonderful.
you film this movie? You said you were on location. Where was that at?
And the UK. I did
Yeah.
most of it there. All the extra, we were in. Oh, it's the Queen's Woods. I forget. Oh, Windsor. We got to shoot out there in their forest, which was amazing. They'd only recently just started allowing filming in those woods, so you don't see a lot of that. But and we had some sets there, but then to shoot everything, Angelina could only shoot here in LA or down in LA, and so the last 3 weeks of the shoot, we replicated sets for the interiors of the house. So for her to be shot in. So it was like, wow, you know.
All good things are, aren't they? Though, really.
Yeah. And Brett, you actually have a question about
Well,
Miss Jolie.
yeah. I just have to ask. I attended last year's D23 Expo and watched as Angelina Jolie took the stage, and she was introduced for Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, and for the Eternals. And I was sitting easily 40 feet away or more, and she took my breath away. What a presence. It was like all of the air rearranged its molecules when she walked across the stage. Literally, it was amazing. The experience was amazing and literally breathtaking. Okay, so she is in your film, Come Away. What was your experience with her like? Does she, in fact, rearrange air molecules all the time, everywhere she goes?
Pretty much, yes.
Really?
Yeah, and she knows what she wants, and she knows how she wants to do it, and she's professional, and she was very supportive of me, and it was a good experience. I mean, I sort of gave her free reign on her costumes and her. She wanted to find the look of the Queen of Hearts, and so she and her costume and makeup artist, you know, I kept saying, can I come in and see? And she goes, no, just give us a little more time. And so when she walked onto the set in that magnificent look, the way she'd done her hair, and she put this prosthetic on her forehead, it was amazing. So scary but beautiful at the same time. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, cool. That's good to know.
That is wonderful.
She literally, moves the air
Yes,
molecules. That was amazing.
Vanessa, you had our next question.
Yeah, well, I did want to go back to what you said about grief and animation in children's films. So, you mentioned the storyline of The Lion King and Mufasa's death, which, by the way, even as adults, we still haven't gotten over it. So, with your new film, Come Away, which, by the way, we really loved watching that film. It's just, I would describe it as like whimsical and just really, it was a delight. That's why I had to ask about where it was filmed, because I felt like I was taken away someplace as well. So we really enjoyed it. So, but we wanted to ask you about those, in a way, teachable moments in the film. So what's your philosophy on telling stories to children about grief and life's not so happy moments?
I've always thought that your imagination is what you get to escape into to help you cope with things. And I've always followed that line of thought. You know I got some grief in an interview about Mufasa's death and how, traumatizing that is. And I go, yes, it is, but it's on screen and it's safe. It's not happening to them. They're watching it and their parents can talk to them about it. And instead of telling them, oh, everything's perfect and everybody loves everybody, that's not setting them up very well for the world. I think that's over sheltering. And so what safer place than in your own home or sitting between your parents in a movie theater to see these things. And they weren't graphic. It's not gory. It's not any of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Not what I mean. I'm just saying there are difficult things in life that, and that's what I love about fairy tales, because that's what they are. They're cautionary tales, and some pretty horrible things happen in fairy tales, um, but you get a lesson out of it and how to look at it. It just sort of helps you with life's lessons. So
Yeah, and even as an adult, as I'm watching it, I'm seeing that, grief, children handle grief differently and they see things differently. And I think both Lion King and Come Away really communicates that well. So there's something for kids to take away and for adults as well, that remember, the kids may not be seeing this in the same eyes that I'm seeing it. So I thought that was so perfect.
oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Brett, you had another come away question.
Well, there are several well-known actors in the film. So what was it like working with David Oyelowo and Michael Caine?
Oh, that was, I think David Oyelowo was a little like fluttery to be with. It was lovely. David, I think, was so excited to be offered the role, because he'd never thought he would get to be in one of these period films, that he's always loved these things. And so I remember when I went to meet with him, he'd said, I was waiting for that moment to tell me why I was asked to do this script, like there was something in it. And then he got to the end and he was like, there wasn't anything. It's just a couple with these two kids. It wasn't like, oh, it's because he's Black that he's got this, that. It was just, and the script wasn't written, I think Marissa initially thought, okay, it's a white, she wasn't even thinking racially, it was just, this is the story. And it was just because I'm a fan of his, and I loved his work in Selma especially, and he just has that thing. When I saw his name on the cast list as a possibility, I went past it thinking, oh, that's a shame, I'd love to work with him. And then I thought, wait a minute, boom, 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 back, why not? And started going through the story, and you didn't have to change anything. It worked beautifully. So he was excited, and I was very much, when I talked to him, I said, I realize I'm stepping in a world that I don't know a lot about. I'm a middle-aged white woman, and I'm, I just want to be open to everything. So if I'm making a mistake along the way, or there's something that's not right, and he was so gracious about it. And so he kind of held my hand through the whole process, but there really wasn't any landmines to step on, because it was just a story about this couple with these children going through what they were going through. So,
and I think that's, I think sort of the exceptional part of the casting of this, that it's just, it you just let it happen. And I think that that's a really good message for us right now. This is just a story.
It was,
it might look a little different and it might take just a moment, but when you're in it, it makes no difference whatsoever. Yeah. And in fact, I applaud that. I think it's great. So, again, white guy, but I'm like going, every opportunity for everyone, so.
Yeah, and the thing is, when we were making it, we didn't know the pandemic was going to have, we didn't know Black Lives Matter was going to explode like it did, we were just making this movie, so I'm sort of in awe of the timing of how this has worked out, that I hope, people it's something that they will enjoy and be accepting of. Although we've already had the issue of having to, IMDb having to shut down, but I don't know if you heard about that, but a lot of people going in and putting negative reviews before they've even seen it, just because they didn't like that the kids were multiracial.
Well,
so frustrating.
Yes,
so frustrating.
And but I think, looking at it from the other side and the other perspective, to think about, I have had the privilege of always having myself represented in these characters. Peter Pan is always a white little boy, and you can see him in like, so to me, that was something that I had growing up. And now you're providing that for so many other kids that did not have that opportunity before. And so I think that that is where, you know, the world is full of very questionable individuals right now. But the fact that we, that, you know, like that whole idea that representation truly does matter. You mentioned about Jeffrey Katzenberg bringing women into animation and how much that had an impact on your life and your career. And now think about what you're able to do through your art, getting that representation, and what that's going to do for other kids coming up who are finally going to see themselves in Peter Pan, in Alice. Like that is monumental in my mind. So it's just great. It's just wonderful. And you know,
We learned
probably
through
go on a diatribe about the
learned.
other side of that, but you know, just the amazing creativity that you brought to this film. It's just wonderful. It's just a wonderful film. Whimsical is the right word. It takes you away into a place and tells you a full story, and you know, it all gets where it's going, and it's just a beautiful story. So I can't recommend it enough to people to go and check out this film on video on demand. You can find that on all of those different platforms, surely. So you know, we've had the chance to interview a lot of creative individuals during the pandemic, because again, going back to your husband telling us to get out there and do it. So we have been. And what we found is that the flow of creativity isn't really stopping, that people are still working on things. They're still getting their projects out there. And so we just wanted to ask and finish on what you have coming next. What is some other projects that you're working on, if you can tell us any of them? When we had talked to Kevin, he mentioned something about the cartoon touch. That was something that was being worked on. So just didn't know if you had any projects coming up you'd like to talk about.
Well, I'm well, Cartoon Touch sort of got into got mixed into the mire of Disney buying Fox, you know, and that whole thing. So it's sort of stalled out for the moment. We haven't given up on it. But, for me, for right now, I've actually, because of the pandemic and everything, I've decided to take a sabbatical and work on some of my personal projects. I'm trying to write a couple of books. I've got actually 3 that are floating around, but one is a novel that I eventually like to turn into an animated film. It's based on a very obscure Grimm's fairy tale, which I'm not going to say because it's public domain, so I don't want anybody getting us.
That's enough. You don't have to say anything else. It might be Grimm Brothers, or it might be the brothers who live next door.
Yeah.
You know.
And I have another a children's book that's based on my my film that got me hired at Disney that I did at CalArts. It's a student film, so I've been working on that on and off for about 20 years. And then the other one is a memoir. Considering I've written things over the years, so it's just a matter of trying to put things together and see if anybody has any interest whatsoever. So
we do.
Well, certainly we do.
We do. So
you've got at least 3 readers. You can tell a future editor, you can name 3 people that for sure will read this book. But that's wonderful that we might be able to experience that through writing and everything. And of course, we'd love to have you back on when all those projects come in the future. But thank you so much for sitting down with us today and to talk to us about some of the points of your career, and then also your new wonderful movie that I really can't promote enough to have people go out there and watch. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to watch that. It was wonderful.
I'm glad they got it to you in time. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Brenda, and have a great day.
Me too. It was really nice talking to you all.
Awesome.
the other thing I just have to say, I know this is really people could care less, but anyway, thanks to ancestry.com, I have found out that I am 50% Scottish. So I think 50% 50%, I guess you can kind of see, but anyway, 50% Scottish. So now I have to go watch Brave again because I think it has to become my favorite movie. I don't know, because I don't know if I'm going to get to Braveheart, But anyway, but thank you. So I'm like going Scottish.
Yeah, I know. I'm more Scottish than I thought I was too, which is amazing.
And it keeps changing a little bit, but I mean, there was.
I get more, so
I got 50%. I'm like going, and I can't do a Scottish accent to save my life. I'm like going, I'll work on it. So.
What a wonderful experience it was to be able to talk to Brenda about all of her career. I mean, I think we could have had talked to her for hours with all of the work that she's done and all of the magic and creativity that she has brought to this planet. I love being able to talk to her. Brett, talk to me about your thoughts. This is your first chance to talk to Brenda. What do you think?
Well, it's so nice to see someone from around here do so well, in the business, so that's amazing. And, she sort of confirmed my theory that Angelina Jolie is magical. Who knew? I'm like going, she changes the air molecules whenever she walks into a room. So anyway.
Yeah, that was great.
I mean, I kind of thought so, but
it was great to talk to her about that, that cast and that amazing film that she has, Come Away. So you can check that out on video on demand for sure. But Vanessa, your thoughts on talking with Brenda Chapman?
I really love her, and I feel like we have a lot in common. Like, she's like, oh, I love period pieces, and I'm like, I love period pieces. And she's like, I love fantasy. I'm like, I love fantasy too. And like, we both kind of have curly hair, and we've got like the Scottish thing going on, and Brett's one clan away apparently too. He's part Scottish. So
oh my gosh.
I just really love talking to her. I love talking to creative people, and she was so generous with her time to talk about her wonderful career. But also I want to thank you, Craig, because you've been talking about kind of holding it over our heads perhaps a little bit, that you had gotten to talk to Kevin Lima and Brenda Chapman, and Brett and I hadn't, because we weren't a part of the podcast at that time.
Not
so
bad.
But I'm so thankful to you that you shared that with us. You reached out to them so that we could have a chance to talk to them. So I feel like now we owe you like maybe a trip to Disneyland. Like, we have to take you to Disney so you can be a part of what we did. So thank you to you for putting this all together.
It's one of those things though. They're both so generous with their time, and they're so supportive. It's like you mentioned this in the thread, Vanessa, even before you had a chance to talk to Brenda, that sometimes behind the podcast we get relatively nervous about these things, right? We get a bit butterflies in our stomach before we get going and all of that. But with this interview, even at the beginning, it just felt more comfortable, because it almost feels like these are two individuals really that are just so generous and wonderful with their time, and just so friendly and nice, and just like you're having a conversation with a friend. And that's exactly what it felt like today. And so I think that even without me having interviewed them before, they were likely to say yes to us along the way. And I'm just glad that you had the chance to meet with Brenda, because she is just such a wonderful, creative person who really loves her work and puts all of that passion into her work, and it shows. I mean, go back and watch any of those Brenda Chapman films. Basically the whole Disney Renaissance, in some way, shape, or form, she worked on just about all of those films. The Prince of Egypt is just a phenomenal film, and I know it's DreamWorks, so sorry, Brett, but we have to mention how good it is.
I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about.
And then also the new film Come Away. and of course I can't forget to mention Brave. All of these pieces that they had and everything that she's been working on is just phenomenal. I cannot wait. I hope that memoir comes to pass, because I will for sure be asking her for a signed copy and tell her to send it our way, right? But no, truly, thank you, Brenda, in case you're listening back, and especially even if Kevin, if you're listening back, we truly value everything that you've done for us, and couldn't thank you enough, for sure. So any final thoughts, Vanessa?
Well, we have gotten, all of us, tattoos that say WWKAB. What would Kevin and Brenda or D do? So this podcast thrives on what would Kevin and Brenda think of this? What would they advise us to do? So thank you to them. And also, really, again, if you haven't seen Come Away, please go watch it. I really enjoyed, so for those who may not know, it's a weaving of Alice in Wonderland and Peter Pan, which we mentioned earlier, but the way they're woven together is, and the way it switches from real life to this whimsical fairy tale location. It's just a really delightful movie, and I hope you all enjoy it.
Absolutely. Brett, final thoughts?
I'm gonna go watch everything she's done again right after this.
You're gonna have a Brenda Chapman renaissance.
Yes, especially Brave, because those are my people. Now that I know that I'm 50% Scottish. So.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you all for listening. Of course, we love your support. If you're listening for the first time, please consider subscribing to the podcast on any podcast platform that you have available to you. You can also find us on nprillinois.org under the Community Voices tab. You can also follow us on social media if you search Beyond the Mouse on Facebook, also Beyond the Mouse Pod on Instagram, as well as we are part of the Front Row Network. So you can search for them on all social media by searching for the Front Row Network. I always forget to mention, we also have for the network a Patreon. So if you go to patreon.com/the Front Row Network, you can also sign up for some additional bonus content from us as hosts, all of the different hosts from the Front Row Network. And thank you for supporting our efforts to bring additional content to you as we move throughout the year. We are in the month of December. I cannot believe it. So we have some really fun Christmas episodes coming your way. And then, of course, maybe one of my favorite episodes that we do each year, and that's the year in review. And while 2020 has been an interesting year, it has been quite a gangbusters year for us here at Beyond the Mouse, and we can't wait to review that with you and go back and look at all of those as we move along. So, and then we also have quite a special guest potentially joining us on Christmas Day. So we're excited to unveil that in the near future. Be checking out on our social media for that announcement. So,
yeah, and it ain't Santa.
That
extra special.
It might be Santa. I don't know.
Maybe it's Rudolph.
Maybe it's Rudolph with his nose so bright.
Oh gosh, here we go.
Won't you guide his sleigh tonight? For Beyond the Mouse, I am Craig.
I'm Vanessa.
And I'm Brett.
And we will see you real soon in the Scottish Highlands.
It'll be great.
I'm not going to try that.
I can't do it. See,
I can't do it.
But my last name's Ferguson, so I can do it a little bit.
Hey, that's pretty good.
Ferguson.
That's pretty good.
Oh my gosh. Oh my, I didn't know that we could be related. That's so exciting.
We might be.
Am I not related to any of you guys? I think I'm mostly Irish.
McFarland, you can still come and have a pint with us.
Okay. I certainly can have some pints, that's for sure.